There's no shortage of watches that have incredible dials, that have a great degree of execution and detail work in them, but then there are some that are a cut above the rest. Some that you take a look at and you just can't fathom what went into them. This is the An0rdain Model 1 Fumé Pain Grey is what they call it, and I have it lent in by my friend Andrew for review. To be honest with you, this watch, when it came out, the Fumé line of An0rdain Model 1 watches, there was a lot of hype around them. Almost every social media outlet was raving about the incredible dial, and I wanted to form my opinion on them. So let's take a closer look. Now these videos are shot at 2x magnification. I will be going into much further detail, but before we do that, let's talk about the vitreous enamel dial process. It starts off with a 1mm thin silver dial blank that is then stamped into a dome shape, polished to achieve a fine dimpled texture. This is important, as later on that texture will relate to the dial scattering light beautifully. The backside of the dial is then counter enameled to prevent bending while it's being heat treated in the kiln. Enamel translucent powder is then applied onto the dial, and then it is heated up to 800 degrees. Then taken out, cooled, and examined for any flaws such as dust or bubbles. Those flaws are then removed, and then the dial goes back into the kiln. This process repeats over and over until there are no flaws. Every single time the dial has been taken out of the kiln, there's a possibility that as it cools it could crack. With such a high rate of failure and a high cost in manufacturing, there are reasons why manufacturers will shy away from this technique of enamel dials. However, An0rdain has managed to get the rejection rate down to 30% with their technique. Now, to my point, at 4x magnification, these dials appear as if you are shrinking yourself down to microscopic levels to experience a world never seen before. It's as if Ant-Man or Doctor Strange met together and traveled through space and time. I found these dials to be extremely beguiling. These level of details, the innate textures, and little divots within the enamel dial are not prevalent at eye level. Now, I do have to say that for a $5,000 watch, the hands are rather simplistic, and I understand that they were going for a straw finish, but can't help but feel that a high polish may work better. For a watch that has such an extravagant dial, the hands are a bit of a letdown. They are so simple in their finishing. I can definitely tell that they have been handmade, which is a great thing to have for a watch that costs nearly $5,000. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the handset on this An0rdain Model 1. What do you think? Am I delusional? Mind you, the nearest competitor is Grand Seiko, and they don't do vitreous enamel. Their enamel dials are far more costly, but one will have to say that at this specific price point, Grand Seiko has incredible hands. Now, while some of us can justify buying a watch purely on the dial aesthetics alone, a watch is certainly more than its dial, and An0rdain does do a good job packaging the watch with a beautiful leather travel case that has space for 2 watches, and it does also have a compartment here, a flap, that will separate between the 2 watches. You can even carry some straps in it. Now, not all An0rdain watches will come with 3 straps as pictured here, and this comes on to another topic, customer service. Andrew, who ordered this watch about a year and a half of a wait, said that it wasn't exactly a smooth experience from the onset. He was expecting to get the watch within about a year after he got the build date and everything settled in. However, it took an additional few months after that, as the enameling process was taking longer. As Andrew waited for the watch in anticipation, he got a message from An0rdain customer service that for his extra wait time, they would be giving him a few extra leather straps to go along with his watch. I think that is exceptional customer service. He was communicated to along every step of the way, when he had placed his deposit, to the actual time that his watch was being assembled and worked on, and then to the point where they're expecting it to be shipped out. And anything that was happening in between was subsequent emails and clarity all the way through. Customer service is something that is integral to the experience of owning a watch, and now I begin to get it. For the person that appreciates a customized experience and old school watchmaking, this is very similar to the experience of getting a custom bespoke suit at Savile Row. My opinion is that the watch itself, you have to look at it objectively. As a reviewer, I'm looking at these watches for the things that stand out. One of the things is that it's hard to read the time. The dial is this beautiful blue-gray color, but mixed with the gold numerals, the Arabic numerals, and the hands, it all tends to wash out, which may present a challenge to read the time under daytime setting, though I suspect you'd be more hypnotized by the dial than actually telling the time. You can only get this watch with a solid case back, and some of you may bemoan that. However, the movement inside is the SW210, Sellita SW210, not exactly exciting to look at either. This is the medium model, which means it measures in at 46mm lug-to-lug length and just about 11mm thick. The case diameter is around 38mm wide, and I think this is the perfect size that will accommodate nearly all wrists, being that the watch is extensively high-polished surfacing. I think that you'll have to get used to this watch being a fingerprint magnet. It is a beautiful case, although simple at that, and the lug design, it doesn't really leave a whole lot to imagination either. It's a very thin and elegant shape, but it really makes no claim to be special in case finishing or shape. Case ergonomics are good. The case shape is tapered downwards towards the wrist, which provides that comfort needed. The lug width is 18mm, so you'll be able to find a plethora of straps should you go with An0rdain's or your own. I think that a 38mm case paired with 18mm lugs is just perfect. The existence of this channel would not be made possible if it were not for sponsors like Oblique, whom 3 years ago had sent me a watch stand to check out. This is a high quality piece made of CNC aluminum, soft leather materials. It is a double stacked layered system where you can have two watches on the same stand, and they're back at it again. This time they have a new product release, and this is the Attention watch box that will support up to 6 watches side by side made of high quality lacquered wood that is reminiscent of what you would find in 80s and 90s Japanese hi-fi stereo systems. The wood finish actually has a veneer lacquered effect that has been polished 6 times over to achieve a high sheen. It's a perfect complement to the aluminum, and that lid is actually supported by a high quality Japanese dampened hinge that will give you a very pleasing solid thunk as you open and close it. Now inside you have M-shaped cushions that will deform and compact itself to support a number of watches and different sizes. I find that rotating through watches throughout the day is a ritual for me, and having a place that's dedicated to store all my watches makes that decision process part of the thing I look forward to in the day. And definitely it is a high quality piece that should look at home, right next to your high-end stereo system or your MacBook or your office space, wherever that might be. Consider the Oblique Attention watch box. The link is in the description below. You may be wondering why I have this watch on this aftermarket vintage strap, and that is because the owner of the watch has a 7-inch wrist, which the straps supplied with the watch would not fit my 6.4-inch wide wrist. On the wrist comfort is superb with this watch, with minimal gap between the case and my wrist. Mind you that the case shape and how it curves down to the wrist is a big deal of why this watch is so comfortable. It does wear large though, and something I have to comment that this is the medium model from An0rdain. If it were to be a 35mm, maybe even a 36mm, it might be just perfect, though I can't complain. More dial estate is appreciated as you get a very magnificent dial. I could not for the life of me confirm that An0rdain had modified the Sellita movement inside this watch, but the manual winding experience is positive. The shape of the crown aids with the ergonomics, it has good knurling on it. It even has these subtle crown guards attached to the case that you don't really notice until you get up close. I understand that putting your deposit down to get one of these watches but having to wait for them isn't for everyone, but if you have to get on a waitlist to own a watch, shouldn't it be a unique one that feels special every single time you put it on the wrist? I think that's something to think about. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate your viewership, and I will most definitely catch you in the next one.